Hello there, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to part 4 of the HalloScream review series. Today, we are continuing our journey to Halloween Ends and reviewing the start of an infamous trilogy in this franchise Halloween 4 The Return of Michael Myers. After the fan backlash of Halloween 3's lack of Michael Myers, the filmmakers decided to do a complete 180 and bring Halloween back to its roots. And this is where things start to get a bit messy. First off, Michael Myers died in Halloween 2, so one might think it would be very difficult to bring him back. Well, apparently not, and I guess they didn't put much thought into the logistics of how to properly resurrect someone that burned to a cinder. So, how did they bring Michael back? A straight up reboot? Yeah, it's a little too late for that crap. We'll get to it later. A Friday the 13th Part 6 style resurrection? No. A plot revolving around a cult using dark magic to bring him back? Wrong again. Instead, we get nothing. That's right, nothing. There's no proper explanation as to how Michael Myers is alive after being cooked more than that pizza faced Freddy Krueger from the Nightmare on Elm Street remake. Oh, and that's not the only returning character from Halloween 2. If Michael Myers surviving an explosion and being burned alive wasn't impossible enough for you, then have fun trying to explain how Dr. Loomis survived. Yeah, that's right, Loomis is back, and there's no real explanation for his survival either. He has some facial disfiguration to at least show he was hurt during the explosion. And considering how they could have been lazy and ignored the previous film altogether by showing no evidence of what happened to Myers or Loomis, we can at least give credit where it's due. With that said, it doesn't really matter because at this point the continuity starts taking a nosedive anyway. A little side note before we dive into the story though, there is one character that doesn't make a return, and in fact she wouldn't return for the rest of this timeline. We're talking about Laurie Strode. We get a brief explanation that she died, but they don't go into much detail. The most likely reason Laurie was killed off was because Jamie Lee Curtis was done with the franchise at this point in time. After Halloween 2, she moved on to different projects, which was a good move, especially considering what happens to the story as the sequels go along. With that said, she does eventually come back 2 more times in different timelines for this franchise, so it is what it is. Now, let's get on to the movie itself. One of the biggest points of discussion or praise I've heard from this film is its opening. Instead of going for the traditional Halloween title opening, the filmmakers opted for an ominous montage scene approach. We get several shots of farmland and Halloween decorations while having this creepy groaning sound playing in the background. This, along with the orange letters appearing, gives off a satisfying visual aesthetic for this opening. It gives off a feeling that something evil is coming, which obviously there is. I mean, the title is The Return of Michael Myers. Anyway, the next scene we get is outside a sanatorium where Michael has been for the past 10 years. Apparently, he's been in a coma all this time. Yeah, sure, that makes sense. Get caught in a gas explosion, get set on fire, the worst you get is a coma for 10 years. Yeah, I guess Anakin Skywalker got the short end of that burnt stick. Aside from the absurdity of Michael surviving after the damage he took, I did get a little chuckle from the security guard that escorts the 2 medical personnel up to pick up Michael. His line of "Welcome to Hell" was kind of appropriate and fitting considering where this trilogy goes from here. As they begin to move Michael, we get the Halloween theme playing in the background, which is nice, though it doesn't feel as fitting as I'd like it to. Harkening back to what I said in the previous reviews, the return of the shape should have been more triumphant. If this movie was a direct sequel to the first movie, taking place 10 years later, it would feel more deserved. Regardless, Michael escapes and begins making his way to Haddonfield. But with Laurie dead, he has to target his next of kin, who happens to be Laurie's daughter, Jamie Lloyd, played by Danielle Harris, who would come back to the franchise years later. But we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. If I could sum up this movie, I'd say it's the same shit we got the last 2 times, with a few different characters, an interesting cliffhanger, and a secret subplot that would not be revealed until the next entry in the trilogy. That's not to say that the movie is terrible, it's just you guys already know my thoughts on all of these sequels if you watched the previous videos. With that said, it is nice to see Donald Pleasance again. Yeah, he's pretty much the same as he was last time, but that's the appeal. Like, yeah, I may not enjoy the movie too much, but it's watchable because of his performance. He plays it serious, and seeing him on his never ending crusade to kill Michael Myers is awesome. Speaking of Myers, let's talk about that mask. What the hell happened with this mask anyway? It looks absolutely terrible. I know I made a joke about Michael's mask in the first review, but damn, this looks nothing like the original Myers mask. And in fact, I'd say that it's probably the worst mask in the franchise so far, at least for me. I also find it funny that Michael puts together the same outfit he wore the first time around. He kills a guy, takes his boiler suit, then steals a mask from a store. Honestly, the filmmakers wanted Michael to look similar to how he was in the first 2 movies, then they should have done something a little bit more creative. Something like making him a zombie that was resurrected by the Cult of Thorn. I think Cinemasker said it best.
I still say he should have been like a zombie. Oh, would that have been too much like Jason Voorhees? Well, who came first now?
Now let's talk about Michael's new target. With Laurie Strode out of the picture, Jamie Lloyd, who is Michael's niece, is the person we focus on the most. Though this time Michael's obsession isn't with a high schooler but an elementary schooler. It is a little strange as to why Michael seems obsessed with killing his family. Of course, we all know why if you've seen the sequels, but in isolation, it doesn't make much sense. We know that Michael is willing to kill pretty much anybody, so him moving on is fine, but it just so happens that he finds out that his sister had a daughter and it's like a switch had been turned on. His sole focus is his bloodline. Jamie as a character does work well for the story though. Sometimes with child actors, the performances can be hit or miss, but Danielle Harris does a good job. We have this scene at her school where she's being harassed by these little shits about not wearing her Halloween costume. They say that they know her uncle is Michael Myers, which is interesting. It sort of implies that some people in the town are aware of who she is and her family's dark past. I feel that this scene is subtly setting up the ending of this film. In a way, it reminds me a little of how they present Michael's story in the Rob Zombie film, though without the retarded white trash stuff, of course. And funny enough, when Jamie gets to the store, she ends up picking out a clown outfit that looks similar to the one Michael had in the first movie. We even have this weird fade in of a young Michael Myers in the mirror as Jamie looks at herself. The references to the previous films and the foreshadowing are a couple of other strong aspects of this movie. It's pretty good. Another thing I like in this movie is when Loomis is trying to hitch a ride to get to Haddonfield. This one car pulls over and it has a few high schoolers. They tell Loomis to hop in, and as he gets close, they speed off, leaving a trail of dust shooting in his face. What a bunch of dicks. If this was Grand Theft Auto 5, I'd pull out an RPG and blow that sucker to hell. After that, we meet an awesome character. Loomis gets picked up by a drunk reverend. This guy is hilarious. The two have an awesome exchange of dialogue. They're talking about hunting evil, and the reverend says that damnation always has a face and always has a name.
You're hunting it, ain't you? Yeah, you're hunting it all right. Just like me.
What are you hunting, Mr. Sam?
Apocalypse, end of the world, Armageddon. It's always got a face and a name.
All this dialogue is talking about Michael Myers without saying his name, and it's awesome that they can convey this without any specifics. And to top it off, Loomis takes a big hit of a whiskey bottle. Classic. When Loomis does get to Haddonfield, he shows up at the sheriff's station. At this point, this scene is basically a repeat of what we've already heard. Loomis says Michael is back in Haddonfield, and at first the sheriff is a little hesitant on believing him, but he does eventually come around. At least he comes around a lot quicker than Sheriff Brackett did. Something interesting to point out here is that we see a modern incarnation of the angry villagers trope. I guess the town of Haddonfield really doesn't want a repeat of what happened 10 years ago, so a bunch of rednecks get together to try and hunt down Michael. Oh god, this is it. This is where it started. This is the seed of Evil Dies Tonight. This is where it was planted.
Evil dies tonight!
Evil dies tonight!
Evil dies tonight!
We also get another little Halloween related trope of the fake Michael Myers with some dumb shits pulling a prank dressed up as him. Something we'll see again very soon. One other thing I'll mention before I talk about the ending is that Michael Myers uses a gun. Yeah, for real. But he doesn't use it in the way that you think that someone would use a gun. Instead of shooting it like any normal schmuck would, he stabs with it. It would have made sense if there was a bayonet attachment, but there wasn't. Who the hell stabs someone with a gun? Alright, let's talk about this ending. So, out of all the sequels that started with 4 and went onward, this one had the most interesting idea. First off, Michael finds Jamie and Rachel with the rednecks, kills some of the rednecks, and they end up in a chase by the cemetery. Michael is unconscious for the time being, and Jamie goes over and sits by him as the police arrive, something I think will become relevant later. As she begins walking away, Michael rises up and the cops begin opening fire on him. This scene is akin to the shootout in Predator. He then falls to the ground and debris falls on top of him and they say he's dead. Really? So, getting shot a few times, falling into the ground, and having crap fall on him is what does him in? After all the abuse he took in the previous films, that's it? Okay then, a little bit of a letdown if you ask me. Anyway, after we get back to Jamie's place, everything seems normal. The nightmare appears to be over, but all of a sudden, we begin seeing some familiar visuals. A POV shot of someone wandering through the house starts. A hand grabs a pair of scissors, puts on a mask, and makes its way to the bathroom where Jamie's adopted mother is running a bath. We then hear a blood-curdling scream, and Loomis makes his way towards the stairway. He then sees Jamie in the clown mask with the scissors covered in blood, and Loomis screams. Wow, what an ending. And the cherry on top was that the Halloween theme was playing in the background too. And aside from the first film's ending, this is the best of the sequels. It came out of nowhere. You could argue that this was an obvious setup because of all the dreams and visions she was having. However, that isn't really concrete considering that Laurie was having a dream about Michael too, but as a child. But the context is different, so you can't really compare the two very much. With that said, the ending was amazing, and it was a fruitful setup for a future sequel. But of course, just like the missed opportunity in Season of the Witch, Halloween 4 The Return of Michael Myers would have a good idea pissed away in the sequel. Funny enough, that seems to be a recurring theme in these sequels. They have some nice setups that eventually get flushed down the shitter. All things considered, it's not that bad of a sequel, at least compared to the other sequels in this Thorn trilogy. But for me, the series went downhill after Halloween 3. The first film and Season of the Witch are really the only standouts in this franchise, with a little leeway to 4 because of the ending, but if you've never seen this film, you're not missing much. Would I recommend watching it? Maybe, but it does depend on what kind of horror films you like to indulge yourself into. And because most of these Halloween films follow the same basic formula for the most part, I would say just stick with the original if you have a masked slasher itch that needs scratching. Well, thank you all once again for tuning in. I'm very thankful to all the new subscribers coming in. This series has been a massive success so far, and I'm glad you guys are enjoying it. Stay tuned for the rest of this series, and also look forward to Special Agent Carter Sauce's Magic Projector and the War on Pop Culture on Fridays. So, with that all being said, thank you all very much for watching, listening, and supporting. And as always, my fellow investigators, remember, the entertainment is out.
I'm Special Agent Spooky Clutter.
I'm Special Agent Carter Sauce.
Special Agent Dr. Richtofen.
And until next time, fellow investigators, remember.
The entertainment
is out there.
is out there.